Hey everyone, I hope you're doing well. I hope you're enjoying our move from Brazil's Snake Island to Stan Lee's Marvel superheroes. So we are continuing with nonfiction reading this week, but we will be switching from reading about snakes to Marvel's superheroes. We will also continue learning about and demonstrating our understanding of nonfiction, along with objective summaries and subjective summaries. So we are going to be using this article right here for the next 3 days. Today you will read this article and complete a comprehension check, and then on Wednesday and Thursday you will use this article in order to write an objective summary and a subjective summary of the main topic. Now, you can see that the title of our article is Stan Lee, creator of a galaxy of Marvel superheroes, dies at 95. So just like we should always preview a text and read the title and see if there are any vocabulary words to better understand what we're going to be reading before, that's exactly what we're going to do. And the title is going to give us some good information. So we have our title here. Stan Lee, creator of a galaxy of Marvel superheroes, dies at 95. So based on this title, it is most likely that we are going to be reading about Stan Lee and his career at Marvel and what he did with Marvel and the movies, the superheroes that he created. So overall, the main idea of this specific article is most likely going to be about his life and his career. And it's going to be telling us all the things that he did. Let's continue previewing before we get started with our reading. So if we scroll down, we have our first section here. Then it looks like we have 2 subsections. He had a joy for things bigger than life and magical. Lee brought comic book characters to life in the 1960s. These 2 subsections definitely tell us what we're going to be reading about in these 2 sections. Remember, we will have a main idea of the entire article, but then we will have specific or main ideas of each subsection. Let's keep on scrolling. It looks like we have 2 more subsections. Symbols of social change, Black Panther and Savage She-Hulk. X-Men and Spider-Man hit the big screen. Again, those 2 subsection titles tell us a lot of what we will read in each of those sections. Then we have his early work and early years of comics and the Fantastic Four comics hit stands in 1960. And it looks like our last subsection, he also worked for Marvel rival DC Comics. So yes, Stan Lee apparently worked for DC Comics at one point. I'm going to scroll down a little bit because I have a list of vocabulary words that I think is important to preview before we read. Now, some of you may have already seen these words and understand them, but for some of you, these words may not be part of your normal everyday vocabulary. So previewing them will definitely allow us to understand how they are being used in the reading. Our first word is revolutionize. Revolutionize means to change something radically. You may have heard this word before in social studies with Revolutionary Wars and so on and so forth. But when you revolutionize something, it means you change it. So I'm sure Stan Lee revolutionized the comic book. And then I also include some synonyms for you. So revolutionize also means to transform, alter, or change dramatically. Our second word is frailties. So frailties sounds like the word frail. Most of you should know that the word frail means weak, and frailties are just weaknesses. Okay, so again, I have synonyms, so weakness, weakliness, and feebleness. Our third word is contemporary. It means belonging to or occurring in the present. So modern day, present day, anything that is contemporary would be considered present day or current. The word revived. We often hear the word revived when we're talking about humans. In this case, we're going to learn how Stan Lee revived the comic book, how he brought the comic book back to life. Philosophy is the study of the fundamental nature of knowledge, so thinking. of reality and existence, especially when considered as an academic discipline. The word medium. Now, some of you may think, well, I know what medium means. It means my size or medium in height. Well, in this case, it is a means of communication. He used comic books as a medium, as a form of communicating. The word travails. Painful or laborious efforts, the trials, the tribulations, the hardships that people go through. Inner turmoil. Well, we know internal conflicts are problems within our own mind. So inner turmoil is just that. It might be a state of disturbances, it might be confusion or disorder. So we will talk about how Stan Lee brings these inner turmoils out in our superheroes. The word reluctant means unwilling or very hesitant. You're not sure of something. Foible. Now, this is a word that most of you probably have not heard before, but the word foible means minor weakness or maybe a weak spot, a flaw, an imperfection. Notice that a lot of our words have a connection. Travails, inner turmoil, reluctant, foible, even fallible means that we might be capable of making mistakes. We are error prone, we're flawed, we're weak. And there's a reason for that. Stan Lee wanted all of his superheroes to be very similar to people and humans. Even though they were larger than life and superheroes, they were also people. Then we have the word feisty. It just means very determined, courageous, maybe spirited and gutsy. And then our last word is behemoth. It means a huge or monstrous creature. So maybe Hulk comes to mind when we hear this word behemoth. However, Stan Lee was this behemoth when it came to the comic industry. Okay, let's get started with our reading. Let's go back up to the top and we will get started. And before we get started, just know that this article comes from newsela.com, and you can find lots more articles there as well. Okay, here's our first section. Legendary comic book creator Stan Lee died Monday, November 12th. He was 95 years old. Lee helped revolutionize the comic book. He also helped Hollywood make billions of dollars by introducing human frailties in superheroes such as Spider-Man, the Fantastic Four, and the Incredible Hulk. So right away we see that he revolutionized the comic book, okay? And let me get that in yellow. So we have revolutionize, and he introduced human frailties in superheroes. Wait, I thought superheroes were supposed to be perfect. But if all of you know, and if all of you have watched any of the Marvel movies, and you will have seen that most of the superheroes that Stan Lee created did have weaknesses. And remember, frail means weak. So Stan Lee wanted his superheroes to have some sort of human weakness to make them more human. Lee died in Los Angeles, California. As a top writer at Marvel Comics and later as its publisher, Lee was widely considered the architect of the contemporary comic book. I'm going to highlight this right here, who is the top writer and publisher of Marvel Comics, okay? That would be something good and important probably to include in an objective summary. And he was considered the architect of the contemporary comic book, meaning he built the contemporary comic book. He revived the industry, brought back the industry to life in the 1960s by offering the costumes and action craved by young readers. However, he also insisted on including sophisticated plots, college-level dialogue, science fiction, and even philosophy. So he wasn't just writing comic books that were funny and simple. He was writing true life stories so that his comic books can kind of connect to almost anyone. Millions responded to the unlikely mix of realistic fantasy, and many of his characters, including Spider-Man, the Hulk, and X-Men, went on to become stars of blockbuster films. Recent projects he helped make possible include the films Black Panther and Doctor Strange, and the TV show Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. I'm going to highlight these films right here. Again, this might be some information that you could include in an objective summary. Remember, objective summaries are factual information. Here's the next subsection. He had a joy for things bigger than life and magical. I think everybody loves things that are bigger than life. I think of them as fairy tales for grown-ups, he said in a 2006 interview. We all grow up with giants and ogres and witches. Well, you get a little bit older and you're too old to read fairy tales. But I don't think you ever outgrow your love for those kinds of things. Things that are bigger than life and magical and very imaginative. Lee considered the comic book medium an art form, and he produced many comic books. By some accounts, he came up with a new comic book every day for 10 years. That would be 3,650 comic books. I wrote so many I don't even know. I wrote either hundreds or thousands of them, he said.